Hey everybody, I'm Scott Linebrink, your host of Get in the Game podcast, and I'm back for another episode with a friend of mine, Chris Carpenter. Chris, welcome to the show.
All right, thanks, Scott. Appreciate it.
Good to have you here, Carp. You and I have been able to connect after the baseball career. We're both long retired from our careers in baseball, but it's kind of interesting to think back on the time and reflect. And of course, for me, it was very formative and shaped a lot of who I am, and I'm sure it's the same for you.
Yeah, for sure. It sure is. It's obviously a big part of our life consistently each and every day. So it has to, you know.
Well, Chris, you were a major league veteran for 15 years. You played a little bit longer than I did, but you started with the Toronto Blue Jays. You were drafted in 1994, I believe. First broke into the big leagues around 97. You've won a Cy Young Award. You've won two World Series championships with the Cardinals, and you were a three-time All-Star selection. Additionally, you were twice named Sporting News National Pitcher of the Year and received a number of votes for Comeback Player of the Year. You had a few injuries in your career too, which I'm sure contributed to your resolve and getting back out on the field. And I want to talk a little bit about that later. But you and I mostly saw each other from across the field. We were only teammates in my very last year of playing. But what I saw was this just bulldog persona and a guy that was willing to do whatever it took to win. Where did that come from?
Yeah, I think it was built up inside of me growing up as a younger brother. I had a brother that was 3 years older than me, so if I wanted to play out in the yard with everybody, I had to I had to compete really hard to get out there. No matter what it looked like. But I think my career grew, my life grew. Um, I think for me, the competition part, the baseball part, the winning part, and then just being a good teammate, it really meant a lot to me. Um, of the people around me, it was, as you know, Scott, when you're in that group, you're around those people more than you are your own family.
Hmm.
So it turns into like you are are fighting for your family each and every day. And it just, I don't know, man, it became real important to me that fifth day and even the days in between and the guys that were around me, my teammates, they were real important to me. Um, I think it just pulled out that competitiveness in me at times too. There was multiple other things probably that was built inside of me like that. But I think just the importance of each and every day for me, knowing that it was going to be over quickly too, right? Doesn't, although you seem like you're going to live in it and play forever, um, as you know, and I know it doesn't happen that way.
You talk about being a good teammate. Who are some of those early teammates that you can think of that taught you what it means to be a good teammate?
Yeah, I think early on in Toronto, it was Woody Williams, Pat Henkin. I got to play with multiple different guys that, I'm a watcher. I'm not a talker. So like I would just sit around and just watch. And I used to get kind of made fun of by some of those guys because they were like, what are you doing? Like you're just sitting around staring at everybody. And I'm like, I'm just listening, man. I'm evaluating. I'm listening. I'm paying attention to what's going on around me. Excuse me. So I got to learn from a lot of guys. I mean, I played with Roger Clemens, David Wells,
Mm.
like I said, Woody, Pat, Mike Matheny. I mean, just from legends to just, at the time, Mike was our backup catcher. I mean, he taught me a lot about what it looked like to be a competitor, just a human being. And, so, I mean, I had the privilege to play alongside all different guys, different types of guys and different types of teammates. And I took a lot from them all, pieces from them all. But if you were to throw out two names early in my career, it'd be Pat and Woody.
Mm. Yeah, I had a chance to play with Woody myself in San Diego, and
Mm.
he was much older than me, but a guy that I remember just really teaching me a lot. And I love what you said about how you were an observer, and it was about the behavior, not necessarily
Mm.
what people said, but what they did.
Yeah,
That's really important when we think about how we want to set an example for anybody.
yeah, for sure. And I think, like I said, I could take just pieces from Woody and Pat. Like it wasn't like one of the many things that they taught me was or that I observed through them is there was a different field Pat and a different field Woody than off the field, if that
Mm.
made sense. Like you could really separate those two pieces. You didn't have to um, be that hard nosed. They were kind, graceful human beings off the field,
Mm.
and then I mean, when they changed on the field, just the competitive level and again the importance of each and every start to them. So that was something that they taught me was they would take me under their wing, come and comfort me, talk me through different situations, but they were able to take the mound and they were a different guy.
Yeah, so that's a great point because, the casual fan, maybe people that are listening to this podcast, they may have a picture of you in their head, kind of like I did before you and I were teammates. They maybe when they watched you out on the field, they didn't get to see like what was really behind the scenes. So what were
Hmm.
maybe some of those things for you, like your off the field persona that maybe many people don't get to see, and what are those things that contributed to making you great?
Yeah, I'm a totally different guy off the field. Completely vulnerable. I struggle with confidence at times, which is weird. Um, I'm kind of, I don't like social events. I don't like people around me. I don't like a lot of people around me. I'm better one-on-one than I am in groups. I'm not a guy that, likes to go into situations where there's a lot of people that are unknown. Very reserved. I'm a homebody, introvert guy that, um, but on the field, like cross those lines, I turn into a different person that I can't wait to get out there and compete. So I think it gives me, when you're talking about I think it gives me a nice balance in life. I'm not always on and hard. There's silliness and goofiness and quietness too.
Yeah. What when you think back on your career in Major League Baseball that spanned those 15 years, what are some things that really stick out to you? What do you remember?
Um, I first thing that pops in my mind is walking into the Metrodome the day I got called up. Excuse me, and how grand it was. Although the Metrodome, as you probably remember, wasn't the greatest place, but it was like, wow, I mean, I'd never been in a place like that before in my life. It was just so cool, and knowing that was going to have the opportunity to play there was one memory. I think just again going back to some of the people that I was able to play with. I had the ability, like I said, to play with Roger Clemens, who I grew up watching as a Red Sox. I had posters of him on my wall when I was a kid. I remember going to Fenway and watching this guy compete, and then I had a chance to share a clubhouse with him and a locker room with him for 2 years. Was pretty cool. I think, on the backside of it, I think just traveling, I think was really neat. Being able to experience, all those cities and different places, different restaurants and those sorts of things were pretty neat. So, and then again, you learn through defeat, you learn through winning, you learn. I mean, it shaped me as a person too. Um, Going through all the ups and downs and the pressures and the commitment that you have to make to be good and all those things. There's just so much the game shaped me as, and then I go back to like the people, just the amount of people that I got to meet, the relationships I got to make with people like yourself and Woody and Mike and Matt Holliday, and I mean I can go through 15, 20 different names of guys that I still talk to that were just great people in my life.
Yeah. Favorite stadium? Did you have that place where like you just dominated when you went out there, just had that good feeling when you took the mound?
Yeah, I think early on in my career it was it was Old Comiskey. I don't know what it's called now, where the White Sox were. I always pitched well there for some reason, and at home against them for some reason. That team. my results wise excluded. I loved going to Pittsburgh, standing in that dugout of the overlooking of all the yellow bridges and the city skyline and stuff like that. I love that view, but I mean, you always have to go back to the old school stadiums. I was fortunate enough that I was able to play in Old Tiger Stadium before they closed that down. And just the history and memories and the people that had gone through there and Wrigley, Fenway, Yankee Stadium, places like that. It's just, again, growing up as a kid watching some playoff games and different things like that. The old stadiums were just super cool.
You mentioned the challenges. Can you talk for a minute about? I mean, I know you had some pretty significant injuries in your career. I mentioned the several votes that you got for Comeback Player of the Year. I remember when I was teammates with you, we were both working through some injuries. But what is it about the injuries, the defeats, the challenges that really, what did they teach you and how did they contribute to the player that you became?
Yeah, I think, early on, the first serious one, I mean, I had elbow surgery early in my career, but it was just, a couple month rehab and back to normal. But my first one was my shoulder. That was when I got released from Toronto and picked up by St. Louis. You could sit there and fold it up or figure it out. And I think that was a changing point in my life, to be honest with you, not just my career, of what it looks like to work through things that you're not expecting, that could be real difficult in your life. And truth be told, I'm better at it, or was better at it on the field than I am off the field in my personal life at times. But it's still, it taught me a lot, and it helped me learn how to persevere through the difficult times. And there was moments, that first surgery, I was like, man, I'm done. I can't do this. And then I buckled up and was like, let's see what happens. And I was able to do that, again, life changing in my career, and in times, for my personal life. And then it just made it easier. The more it happened was like, you learn from the situation. You accept the fact that, this is what you're going through. And now, again, you can either sit there and sob in it, or you can get up and figure out a way to get better. So I used all my experiences through injury just to find a way to get better. I think it made me tougher as a human being. I think it made me tougher as an athlete, tougher as a competitor, because again, as you know, going through injuries, it's not just great days all the time. There's a lot of work and a lot of soreness, and I was able to, I think, get stronger and tougher through it.
Is it hard to admit that you need help in those times of injury?
Yeah, I think so. At first, again, you just, but it's also, you have to start trusting people that you don't have 100% trust in, right? Like you gotta trust your doctors, you gotta trust your therapists, you gotta trust your rehab coordinators and the people around you that are supposedly know more than you do.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of different things that you go through, right? You run into a guy that you're not 100% sure knows what he's doing. You're like, I'm putting I'm in this guy's hands right now, trying to get better. And so yeah, I mean, it's definitely a learning experience.
Yeah. Carp, shifting the conversation here a little bit, I want to talk about your faith transformation because you had a pretty dramatic experience that transformed your walk with Jesus. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, for sure. Again, I'll give you the Cliff Notes version of it, but it was, I, I was living in a life that, just, if you think about a professional athlete, that's just where I was. I really didn't, know where I was going as a person, right? I knew what I was as an athlete. I knew what I was on the field in between those lines, but away from the field, I was still trying to get away from my identity of being just a baseball player and who am I away from the field as a father, as a husband, whatever you want to, friend, son, that type of thing. again, I shared some of those names that were around me. And St. Louis was an amazing place with faithful and Jesus loving people in that clubhouse. And, you see them walking around and they just continue to invest and continue to try to talk to you about it. And, I was that guy that was always like, I'm okay. I'm okay with where I'm at. I can figure it out myself. Right. And then that experience, that I've talked about before in Georgia when I went down to Wayno's fundraiser and just had a life-changing experience of giving it all to Jesus, giving it up, and saying, I can't do this without you anymore. And he transformed my life. There's peace in my life from that moment moving forward. Not that it's been 100% easy all over the place and in different areas, but there's deep down peace in there. And, that experience was one that, I go back on and I think about a lot when you're sitting around trying to figure out your purpose and your journey and what's next and all that stuff, is that I know that I can't do it without him. And then what I've learned since then is that it's an ongoing story, right? It's not just that one moment, in your life. It's that was whatever, 10 years ago. And it's 10 years of a story now that's continuing to be written, in different ways. And so that's fun to look back on too.
What were the things, I mentioned it was a pretty dramatic change for you. What were the things immediately that changed?
Like I shared peace, like there was like this overwhelming, like breath of like, okay, I'm not in it alone anymore. And that's just, you can take content in and out of it however you want, but it's just that I wasn't in life alone anymore. I was able to rely and lean on someone to just help and guide me when I didn't know what the heck I was doing anymore. So that was something that changed dramatically. It was just that breath of like, no matter who's in my life, I have someone that I can lean on. And then, I guess moving forward was just the ability to really look back at certain changes that I needed to make in my life. The way I communicated, to walk every day of really paying attention to my kindness and grace for other people. That was something that changed. I could probably keep going on and on about different things, but it was a definite, I would say that first part of what I was speaking about, that piece of just like, so like one specific thing is I hated flying. Hated flying. And I'm talking like I'd have to have a couple of drinks before the airport. I was so anxious, which is kind of weird, right? That's what we did for a living, was fly all over the country all the time. But I hated flying, like super anxious. And from the moment I accepted that time, my flying, like I could get on a plane and I wasn't anxious, which was really weird to me. It was like that's a specific thing that I can remember. Like I could care less about getting on an airplane anymore. It's just like whatever, I just get on it and I'm fine.
Well, I noticed a change in you. I mentioned you and I were teammates at the end of my career, but that was prior to your conversion experience. And then I saw you years later, and it was just like you were a different person. To me, you embodied Galatians 2:20 that says, "It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me." And I got to think that people around you in your close circle, your relationships, they saw that, probably even more so. Was it difficult to navigate those relationships now that you are a different person?
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely relationships lost, but there was also some really good relationships gained. And yeah, you definitely, you have a little bit of bigger of a radar on who you're around and the decisions you're making. And yeah, so you end up um, severing ties of some of that. And then, of course, you have the people that are like, they look at you funny, like, what? Like, you're that guy, you know? And it's like, yeah, I'm that guy. Like, that's exactly what happened to me. So, there's a lot of different people out there that, again, as you know, you just continue to live your life, and you're gonna have people that judge you for certain things, and things that people that accept you for certain stuff. And so it was definitely a transition for me, meaning relationship wise and understanding, who and what was good for me, the directions that I needed to go in relationship, and the people that I need to surround myself around in relationships, and obviously caring about the others that aren't, but um, really focusing on the people that I had around me.
Carp, what would you say? I go back to you talking about how guys just kept inviting you, whether it was Bible studies or chapels. And guys
Hmm.
were just persistent in their invite. What would you say? And I'm guessing that was years, where you might have responded in some regard, but probably not to the level that they were hoping that you would. But then you did respond one day. So, what would you say to somebody who maybe has that person in their life where they just keep inviting, they keep, trying to drip a hint here or there, but maybe they don't feel like maybe it's landing at all? What would you say to them?
Yeah, just continue on because you never know when, right? I think for me, one of the biggest parts of it, and I try to do this in my own life, is it I never felt pressured. You mentioned like the hints. I mean, that's all they were. There were hints here and there. There was never like judgment on, like you need to do this, you need to do this, or right. There was just like, hey, you want to come join? Nah, okay, maybe next time. Off they went. Things like that. There was never that over like just on top of you um, deal. So I think that was important for me. Was just there was persistence, but it was with ease, um, and not just covering me with it.
Yeah.
So I guess specifically is don't stop and do it with kindness, grace, and ease, to where you don't feel like you're overwhelming them with it, because eventually, hopefully, they make that move.
Do you have a soft spot in your heart for maybe folks like that once sat in your shoes and now maybe you have an opportunity to minister to them?
For sure. You sit there and you just have so much, you run into them, I'm sure you do all the time, but people you just have like, dang, like, just have so much hope for these people that if they could just get it, right? They just don't know what they're missing. But you can't force it. It's when they're ready
Yeah.
to make that call. And that was what it was like for me. And so you just keep living, right? Keep living and hinting. And a lot of that hinting is through your actions and how you live, right? You hope that people are watching you, and when people are watching you, you come off the way you're supposed to. And that was, again, a lot of the guys that were around me, including yourself, before was, it's like, dang, there's something different about that guy, the way he walks. Not that life was super easy for everybody, like I said, but there was just something different about that guy. And I go back to Wayno and Woody and Matheny and Matt Holliday and Lance Berkman, and you can keep going on and on. Um, there was just something different. So I try to go out, and if asked about it, I'll talk about it. But really, I just try to go out and live it, and I hope that people see that in me.
So you just made the comment they just don't know what they're missing. So to anyone maybe who's listening and may not have experienced that relationship with God, doesn't know what it means to have a relationship with Jesus, what would you say to them? What's the best part about living each day in this new life of faith?
Goes back to that peace, that breath of fresh air. Again, my every single day life is not always easy, right? Like there's consistent times where you struggle and those sorts of things. Like it's just life. That's what life is. But going back to having someone and to lean on, knowing that you're going to be okay at the end. For me, that's the biggest thing is that breath of fresh air that I have that I didn't have before. It was like fighting all those battles myself and trying to figure out how and what and how I could distract myself from it and what can I buy next or where can I go next or, things like that to like, it's just, where do I go? I go to the Bible. I'll start reading, praying, those sorts of things to deal with those daily struggles that we live in on this earth.
Carp, as we start to wrap up our time here, I'd love for you just to maybe share with us what are some things that you're learning now, or what are some things for the future? We think about legacy and how we want to be remembered. What do you want to be remembered for?
Yeah, I think, and that's it. That's it. I mean, obviously, I think I want to be remembered that I was a builder of the kingdom in my own way, right? Like however that looks. Like I shared, like just by living, people saw something different in me. That I was a kind, graceful human being that cared about people, um, no matter what walk of life they are. Um, I'm learning again, like I said, that although there was a life-changing moment, 10 years ago, um, it's a constant walk and a constant story for the rest of my life that's going to continue to grow. I think in the future, those are things that I would like to continue to be able to share. I think when I first had this transition moment in my life, the people that knew me were like, tell the story, tell the story, tell the story, tell the story of that specific moment. Well, that specific moment was one moment in my life, and there's a lot more moments that have gone on since then that, that I enjoy sharing with people, and hopefully I can continue to do that as the years continue to go.
Yeah. Well, Carp, thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your story and just for the way that you continue to use that story to impact others.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Scott. Thanks for having me.